Remember, you can't upgrade from 32 to 64, but you can at least capture the image. That's a nice thing. All right, so WinFiles is a single file that copies an entire operating system. This is more clever than WinZip by a little bit. It removes duplicate files, hardware independent, stored in a database. You do have to have partitions already formatted on the destination drive to which you deploy something stored as a WIM file. But Microsoft is very proud of this. It's really important to know because all previous versions of Windows, like Windows XP and earlier, did not do this at all. They installed like a program. They had a whole i386 folder, all full of files, and there was a subfolder called sources and such, thousands of files, and one of them was called setup.exe, and you'd run that, it would install the entire operating system like a program. And the whole concept is now different. It's now like Ghost. It stores a binary image of what should be on the drive and just copies it to the drive. Anyway, so each WIM file can have multiple disk images. That's why you can, every version of Windows 7 on this DVD has a WIM file that has all versions of Windows 7, and it works without being huge, because obviously everything in Starter is in Home Basic, and everything in Home Basic is in Home Premium, and so on. It doesn't store multiple copies of the file. It just stores something like links, shortcuts to it, which is what it should do. All right. So you can mount WIM files using ImageX. They'll use this WIM filter driver, and that will then give you an API, which you can use to manipulate the WIMs, which you've done a bit. And if you did the project, so I saw a lot of people doing them in deployment projects, you make your WIM bootable with a slice boot switch. There are two ways to do this. Windows Deployment Services of Microsoft Deployment Toolkit. This is the newer, more powerful one. This is the older one, Windows Deployment Services. Light touch installation is easier to set up, but not as useful because people do need to touch every machine it goes to, typing in things. What people really want is zero touch, where you don't do anything, no user intervention at all. You just do something like boot the machine, press F12, go to PXE boot. It will boot from the network and totally install everything without you touching it again. That's, of course, what people want. And there are a lot of things you need for that. System Center Configuration Manager and SQL Server in particular. These are what people will use at big enterprises. So here's System Management Server is one possibility. That's kind of an old version. There's Windows Deployment Service does provide a PXE version of Windows PE. Now you made, in the projects, you made a Windows PE file which you could burn to a disk and boot from and then run ImageX to capture an image. But you can also make it PXE boot, which means you don't have any CD carried to the machines at all. It boots completely from the network. We have student Chan is currently setting this up to be the way we deploy things in our classrooms, and he's having a lot of suffering. I know I went through previously with Ghost. The problem is PXE is really limited. Booting from network is really, really old, and for some ungodly reason never updated. So you have some incredibly small amount of RAM, like 4 or 8 megabytes is all you have for PXE boot. So you have to find a driver for your network card that will fit in just a few megabytes. And typically you have to go all the way back to an MS-DOS driver to fit in those requirements. So it really is kind of sick, but all you need is you need DHCP so you can get an address, and you need normal networking so it can transfer some files. So that PXE boot is what everybody wants. It's the most convenient. You don't have to carry anything. I've noticed once you get it working, you'll have something like a server in this room running all the time. And if a student has a problem with the machine, you just press F12, boot from the network, and 20 minutes later it's all pre-installed back to zero. It's nice. And around here we mostly do the same thing with deep freeze. Deep freeze does it over. So everything you do on the machine is recorded, and if you reboot it, it all automatically rolls back. But this is another alternative, that even if somebody formatted the drive, or you can still put Linux on it, you can still just boot from F12 or right back to Windows in your default setup. And it, of course, installs all your applications too. Anyway, WDS is the Active Directory version of this thing, Windows Deployment Services. So here's a kind of image. An install is the most popular one. OS to deploy, you can have a boot image, which is just letting you get the machine going. So you can install more. You can have a capture image, like you talked about. That's pretty much what you made here. Or even a discover image, which is used to find a WDS server. These are different kinds of operating system images you'll have around. And DISM is the new Windows 7 feature you've been using this, the plugin image service management tool. Here's what it can do. Prepare a PE image. You can, see, this is the modern replacement of the old technology, Slipstream. You can modify an image without running it. Now, the old-fashioned way to do this, the to a machine, install whatever you want on the machine, and then take another image. And that would work. But at the same time, you can now do things right on the image. Turn on features, upgrade to a different edition, add packages, add drivers, and all that right to an image without deploying, making a fresh image, which is much just a convenience. Put on service packs and so on. It's really very nice. So here's your DISM options. You can get information about a mounted image. You can commit changes to WIM, and you did this in the project. You put on a WIM, create from a DVD, then you'd install something that wasn't included, like image X, and then commit it, and then make a new WIM out of that. All right, Sysprep is always been a pain. Sysprep removes individualized settings from the machine. It has to be done before you image it. But one of the many gotchas about Sysprep is you can only Sysprep a machine 3 times. After that, it will refuse. This is a big problem for corporations. A lot of people like have an image, then they put on a service pack, then they make another image, then they put on another service pack with some drivers, they make another image, and next time they try to Sysprep, it won't go. This is very, very annoying. Now, I believe the point is Microsoft is afraid he will evade their licensing restrictions by doing a Sysprep like every 3 months. So they put in this limitation. I've seen a lot of people, long forms of people complaining about this, because typically you just have the old image and keep doing it. Well, what Sean found yesterday, he told me there's a way that you can turn off this is sort of a hack. You can turn off the licensing service, and then Sysprep can be run a larger number of times. The licensing service is, let me just get it while I remember it. It is the renew license, SLMGR. There, here's the command. And as far as I know, this command no longer works in Windows 7, but it's SLMGR-rearm. That's what it is. I remember this from Vista. See, if you put in a 90-day trial of Vista and you want it more time, all you have to do is SLMGR, rearm, and it will give you another 90 days, or another 30 days, something like that. SLMGR is Software License Management. There you go. Windows, this is glorious Software License Management. So you can change expiration dates and so on here to some extent. Anyway, if you kill the SLMGR service, he says you can run Sysprep more times. And I wonder. But anyway, this handles a lot of those software licensing issues. Anyway, that's a gotcha about Sysprep. And so here's your cleanup. And the goal of this, as far as Microsoft is concerned, is to create the out-of-box experience. I just did this for Mac over the weekend. I'm going to give a Mac to somebody. There's you can boot the Mac with Alt-R. It boots in refresh mode. You can then reformat the hard drive and click reinstall. It keeps an image right on the Mac hard drive. And when they boot it up, it will ask you for your Apple account. It'll be like a brand new Mac. Same for Macs and iPhones. You can trivially reset them to factory default, and then it's like they're brand new to give it to somebody. Sysprep is an attempt to do the same thing in Windows. It'll boot up and have no idea who you are, no idea what his MAC address is, ask you questions like what kind of networking do you want, play the pretty music in the animation, and say what's your password and things like that. There's Sysprep's command line arguments. You can use various things like generalized out-of-box experience is what you usually want. So audit, we'll start the computer audit mode just to test something. Generalized is the one that removes all unique information. This is the Windows welcome mode. Here's other ones, like whether or not show you anything and so on. And here's where you can go to the unattended answer file, because you might not want the user at your corporation to be asked those boring questions, like what kind of networking you use, what kind of password you use. You might want to have answers to those, so you can have an answer file on a USB drive plugged in, and it won't ask them. Even the Sysprep install will just automatically get the answers off the answer file. All right, so here's the configuration tasks. It boots up Windows pre-execution environment. This is the same thing that's been true for many versions of Windows. That's the limited version of Windows that runs during installation. Then you go into Windows setup. It sets up things. It gets to this point where it's going to specialize. This is where it's going to add things that apply to only this machine, like an IP address. Sysprep generalize is what you do to remove those to get to this point. Then it's going to audit system and the user, and you're ready to have the out-of-box experience and start and play the user their original introductory stuff. That's what all these settings are you had if you did the project where you're creating an answer file, at least. So that's what I say. That's what a Sysprep answer file is. And there's a plug-and-play drivers option, and you can make them persist during the generalized pass. Ordinarily, the generalized pass will remove all drivers. In Sysprep, but if you want to, you can leave them in because you are deploying to a bunch of machines, you just want to save time. Or, for example, you have added a special driver of your own that you don't want to remove. So you have an option to make it stay. And that's here, persist all device installs true. That will make them stay instead of pinging off the devices. All right, there is an issue about reduced functionality mode here. There's some of these tools are out of date. They will discuss reduced functionality mode. Reduced functionality mode was a problem with Vista, but it has not been a problem with Windows 7 or Vista since Service Pack 1. When Vista was first deployed, Microsoft was really pushing licensing. They had Windows XP. See, Windows XP, my students had memorized 25-digit keys. You just type it anywhere. It was just a shame, sin and a shame. Windows XP product keys were basically worthless. You could just go to any machine anywhere, run a magical jelly bean key finder, get a key, and just type that key at every machine you touch from now on, and everything would be fine. So it was just freeware. It was so easy to steal. So Microsoft got so fed up, they put out an update called Windows Genuine Advantage, which would phone home every 30 days and see if your key is valid, because they would find the stolen keys and then invalidate them. So your machine that was running would now say it's invalid. This got a lot of people really mad, and it was an optional upgrade. And then Microsoft tried to force you to put that upgrade on by not letting you have service packs and stuff unless you had the Windows Genuine Advantage tool installed. So when they brought out Vista, they were really thought they had this solved. They thought they could have ruthless copyright enforcement, make sure you're not stealing it. So the original Vista would automatically phone home to Microsoft every 30 days and verify the product key. And then Microsoft didn't keep the server up, and the product key verifier went down for 3 days. And thousands of completely legal corporate versions of Vista shut down at workplace, saying they were pirated when they weren't. So Microsoft was so humiliated, in Windows Vista Service Pack 1, they took out the enforcement, and they never, ever put it back. Windows 7 and Windows 8 don't have it anymore. Anyway, the point is, when it did phone home and discover that you weren't legal, it would then put you in reduced functionality mode. The machine would boot up, it would only work for 1 hour, and the only thing you could do is open Internet Explorer and give them a credit card number to buy another product key. Anyway, that's the game. You'll see references to reduced functionality mode because it was an option in Vista, but they don't mean anything in Windows 7. All right, that's the game here. They did take away reduced functionality mode. If you do have your activation key expire, the backdrop simply goes black. Background goes black, and you see a box saying you may be the victim of software piracy. You can just keep using it. So, go grab an eye clicker. I got a few eye clickers about this stuff.